Welcome to Sales Rewired. In this episode, myself, Mark and Alex break down the traits that predict who's most likely to succeed in sales consistently. So it's useful if you're hiring new salespeople, if you're looking at shifting roles across your team, or if you're auditing your team to see who'd benefit most from support or training. Please enjoy the episode, follow us on Spotify, YouTube or Apple Podcasts, and let's get straight into it.
We spoke last week, wasn't it, Mark, about doing these podcasts, and we thought we'd start off with one about what we felt were good characteristics or needed characteristics for salespeople. So I've got my kind of top five, and these are personality traits. So it's not skill sets, because I think that's different. It's personality traits that are useful if you're in a sales environment. So I got my top five. I think you said you've got maybe three, maybe four.
Well, I've got six.
You've got six now, have you?
Yeah. Okay. I there are four I often mention, but I've got it down to my real six. So we'll see how we unfold.
You saw the four and you got it down to six.
Yeah, is what I've done. That's how I work.
Okay, so we got our top trumps of successful or traits for successful salespeople. It may just be worth framing it a bit in terms of the different roles of salespeople, because we may find characteristics are slightly different. And I'm thinking, you've maybe got a sales development rep, somebody who is doing that kind of outbound calling, cold calling maybe at the front end, and that they may have different, I want to say qualities, but different characteristics to your account manager who's responsible then for taking those leads and converting it into a sale. And then maybe at the end you have the customer success managers who are responsible for delivering and farming and growing an existing account.
Great point, massive point. I just off the bat, I know full well I've worked with enough people who are farming or account managers, and I think it's a completely different. I think the capability set for a farmer is vastly different to a hunter, which is part of the problem. We will talk about that in due course.
All right. Well, look. Do you want to go first then with your? As you got six, I've only got five, yes. And we'll see how close they are. So,
I love this.
What's your
We've
first?
chatted for a long time about sales and all sorts, haven't we? But we have never compared notes on this, so we're doing it for the first time right now.
Quite deliberately, exactly. Yes.
And I'd love, this is why it's great for a conversation, because I love people pushing back and chewing it over, and do you know what I mean? And that's when sparks fly and value is created. Yeah. But I do stand by my order. I've chosen this order for a reason. My first one, right? Roll the drums. I call it belief in cause. It's the first thing I look for in anyone who's involved in or contributing even to selling. And let me just kind of put a frame around that. I remember hearing a quote years back. I loved it. It said, if two warriors were fighting, one of them's fighting for the cause and the other one's fighting for the money, which one of them do you bet on? Right. And most people say the cause, the one fight for the cause. That's when I first thought this is a huge idea, because of course a lot of salespeople are supposedly incentivized by the money, and there's been a whole load of research that basically says that intrinsic motivation and intrinsic drive is far more powerful and sustainable on the whole than extrinsic, which includes money, amongst other things. So I believe that everyone bounces out of bed. You bounce out of bed for one reason above all others. You may not have consciously thought of it, but there is one drive more than all others that gets you to do your job, well. And in the area of sales, it's that one thing that I'm looking for in belief in cause. It's like, why are you doing this? If I'm in the business of trying to help people improve in this area, but until I know what that is, I can't really help them improve. And I also don't bet on them until I know what that is, because some people really, really want to make those sales for whatever reason. And it might be that they just love their products and services. It might be that they love serving their customer base, whatever it is. That's my first one.
Yes, it makes sense. It's that whole, what's the motivation behind somebody doing it? I guess the pushback might be, I can see how that particularly works for the customer success manager, maybe, because it's their calls might be their customers' calls. They really want to help their client, and they've got a really good embedded relationship there. I suppose what's harder is if you're recruiting or interviewing a salesperson for the first time, that you kind of dig quite deep to find the motivation, because it's not going to be about your business yet because they haven't started.
And I would say, but dig you must. I would say dig deep and find that one driver that's going to
Yeah,
get them to get out of bed even on the bad days, and
yeah,
connect the value that you are selling to the right people and get it in their hands, because
yeah,
that's the magic, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of people who it's very hard to find, if at all. Say I'm doing it for the money, and I like to find some other reason beyond that, because I think in the top performers there really is some huge drive.
that's a really interesting one, Mark. Into the pot goes belief in cause. It's not really that the will to the belief in cause is deeper than the one I had, which was about buoyancy.
Mm.
So, and what I mean by that is, you're going to get knockbacks in sales, and you need to be able to, bounce back from that. Keep that. I suppose it is your inner drive. It's your inner energy, your enthusiasm to keep going despite all the setbacks that you will inevitably get along the way. You typically managing like a virtual team of maybe a solution architects and uh, bid managers to support you, finance and so on, and you are needing to be, that the person that keeps the drive, the energy up. But that idea of buoyancy, bouncing back, resilience, that all feels encaptured by that word. That's why.
In other words, you become incapable when that buoyancy goes.
Yeah, you go feel flat
You,
and dejected.
yeah,
Yeah, and you
you've got to
start
stay
sinking.
afloat. I happen to think it is one of the hardest professions to remain consistent in, because there's no right answer, and you are placing your bets and trying to tweak the odds and load the dice and do your best and all, and there's so much psychology and uncertainty. You can blow around in the wind, so buoyancy,
Yeah,
yeah, I can see why it's so.
yeah. You have to have that lightness of touch to be able to go with the currents and the wind as it takes you during the sales journey.
And if your
Yeah,
emotions are getting the better of you, which can happen, I mean, I've worked with so many salespeople, and I've been there myself, where you hit bad at times, hard at times. It's quite hard to smile and crack on sometimes. When your
yeah,
income depends on it, and it's the
yeah,
living you're making, that can be challenging for people.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that.
Well, all
That's
right. So
right. Number two on my list, I've called it ownership or locus of control. Right. So it's about taking responsibility for everything. So a phrase I often say to people when I'm coaching people in sales is, because they'll point a finger at the market, no one's buying at the moment, or it's my boss, or it's our internal systems. They will point a finger at everything that isn't themselves, of course, because it's
yeah,
easier, kind of
yeah,
puts them in a position of being a victim. But I always say to them, it is what it is. Now, what are you going to do about it? I always remember as well, quick story on this. Years ago, I worked with a big company in Australia, and loads of people in that company were basically saying no one's buying at the moment. No, I was coaching them all, and they said that no one's buying, the market's dead. But there was one person I sat in front of, and he was scooping up all of the opportunities. And I said, well, what are you doing that they're not? And he just
yeah,
laughed and said, they're not doing anything, so I'm
yeah.
scooping up all the opportunities.
Yeah. Well, it's the old joke, isn't it, about the two shoe salesmen on a desert island, selling the shoes, and one phones back to the office to say, "What the hell have you sent me here for?" And they get me back. Nobody has any shoes. Everybody's barefoot. And the other one rings back and says, "Hey, fantastic! Send me lots of shoes. Nobody's got any."
He's got it perfect.
It's the
Exactly
market.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah. What was so my second one? But my second one was conscientiousness,
Yeah.
which I view in the broadest sense that yes, it's about working hard and having that drive to keep going. If you're in sales, there's always something to do. If you're not chasing a sale or closing a sale, you're at the other end of initiating a new contact or a contract, or an opportunity. Typically in sales, there are processes which, as salespeople, typically, we aren't the number one fans of process. but particularly, and there's CRM systems to keep up. There's all that data that needs to be input, and I'm seeing particularly in our world of AI now, which is as good as the data that gets put into it, but actually is phenomenally good at discovering patterns in sales and buyer behaviors, seller behaviors, provided the data gets in there in the first place. Salespeople will need to be disciplined to put that data into their CRM, the latest contacts they've had, the latest conversations they've had, insights they may have picked up about the marketplace, about competition. Put that into the system, because when everybody does that, all those the micro signals that will be captured suddenly becomes a company asset, a corporate asset. But the AI on top of it will then pick up patterns that will help all the sellers in that organization. This idea of conscientiousness, working hard, but also being disciplined to follow the processes and do the work of putting the data in so that it is clean and right first time, will show dividends and be huge differentiators, I think, in future.
Perfectly put. I couldn't agree more. And again, I'm thinking of all the people that I've worked with over the years, many of whom will have either excuses for not being conscientious and not updating. Yeah. And here's me in my analogies. Now I'm picturing turning over the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle and building that picture as we go. Do you know what I mean? One step at a time. And a lot of people, they might turn a few pieces over, but then they sort of put them back. They don't file it in the system and keep that intel growing as a moving, growing snapshot.
Yeah. Or it gets dropped on the floor, and somebody treads on it and doesn't pick it up, or they keep it for themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing the way that AI is now being used, almost like in sports. There's a lot of football teams now wearing these GPS vests, where you get live data on the player's performance, and the managers are looking at their iPads or whatever and seeing that live data come through, which allows them to adjust the way the team's playing, who should be playing, subs on and off in real time.
Amazing, isn't it?
And I can see that same data from a sales environment, if you're putting data in, you're getting feeds in real time, and particularly on customers' kind of behaviors and how they're feeling.
Yeah, great.
And it won't be long before you're getting this live feed coming in on how a deal's going. Well, but again, that relies on having it in there in the first place. All that sentient analysis, of how people are feeling, tone of voice that you can capture as well.
Exactly.
But it's that feeling of getting information and being responsible enough to put the data in if you're having to do it yourself, as opposed to it being ambiently put in.
Yes.
And then making use of it once it's available.
That's right. All these things I said about loading the dice earlier, I think all of these things do load the dice a little bit more. And I always say with sales, when I'm working with clients, I say it's probabilistic. There's no silver bullet. Every single thing you say or do will either take you closer to the sale or move you away from it. So we want to find out what those are and do more of the things that increase the probability. And you're right, just capturing the intel and the thread and leveraging it wherever you can in the name of connecting more value. You can make it a methodical process if you so wish.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
So unbelievable. So we've had 4, Mark, and unbelievably they've been linked, but they've been different. So what's your third one?
So my third one, I thought for a long time was my first one, right? So I changed it, and that is the growth. Well, I've called it growth hunger or drive to learn. So my first one I said was belief in cause. That was about why you bounce out of bed and want to sell.
Yes.
But just this drive to learn. I mean, first of all, if we take that away and there's zero drive to learn, then you're just going to be stagnant. And as the world changes around you, you're just going to become out of date and less relevant, full stop. But in particular, with switching that drive to learn on, I want to find those people that genuinely want to improve how they sell. I just want to get better at it. The minute I meet someone and I pick up on that, it's the golden skill. And this is why I used to put it at number 1, because that's kind of all you need. I specialise a lot of working with non-sales people and engineers and technical people and so on. And by default, most of them don't want to sell. They didn't sign up to do their career selling. But I need to find that reason why they might want to learn to sell. And with some of them, the drive to learn is, oh, I just want to learn to take the pain away. That counts as well, right? I just want to learn how to, because I've been told by my boss I have to get involved in sales conversations. I don't want to do it. I find it painful. Well, what could you learn? I say to them, what could you learn to make your life easier in this area? Maybe I could learn some ways of making it more comfortable. Perfect. You've got some drive to learn now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So, yeah. So that's interesting. So as you say, your particular specialism is typically technical or engineer background people who are transferring into sales. So that interest in learning, do you find that sort of group of people are typically enjoy learning because because you have to be an expert in whatever technical solution, whatever it may be, you obviously have to learn about it and be an expert in it. So do you find that they like learning, but only about the things that really interest them, typically products or tech engineering type things? Or
yeah, there is. It's a varied answer. I can think of people that fill the former category where they just want to learn maybe the technical side, the engineering side, and they don't want to learn how to sell. And if that's the case, there's a new conversation to have with them, because in life you don't have to play the game that you're playing. Right? I mean, most of us are lucky enough to actually have a degree of choice over the game we're playing. And it's like, well, do you want to continue playing this game, or do you want to step out of this world? I mean, I've worked with very reluctant engineers who've said to me, if my employer tries to get me to sell, I'm out of it. I'm going to get another job. And I say to them, oh, right, and sell yourself into another job? Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah. That transferable skill, an essential skill, really, that is sales, however we frame it. But those, I mean, even the traits that we've been discussing so far, that they should be applied or could be applied to any role. It's just that they come together in a salesperson.
Yeah, they're business, career, and life skills, aren't they? Yeah. I think all of them probably are. I chatted to a young guy the other day, and he said to me, I think sales is the number one skill in life. He really wanted to learn it. And I said, I'm really trying to agree. I mean, learning's up there as a number one skill as well for me. But sales is, because it's about collaborating with someone to improve both of your situations. To get a win-win and grow that win-win and get a yes where the yes makes everyone better off. Yes. So that is a life skill.
And there are the technical aspects of selling, closing techniques, listening techniques, that may appeal to somebody who just likes to understand the process and the technical side. Yeah.
And there's a surprising number of technical or engineer types I've worked with who've said to me, do you know what? I love psychology.
Arts and science of selling. Yeah. Exactly. You have to have both sides of it. The analysis part. Funny enough, Mark, so my third one, well, I don't know if it's surprising or not, but it's very similar to yours. Mine's openness. So I basically use, the big 5 personality traits.
Yes.
One of which is openness.
Yeah.
And that essentially is about an openness to learning, to wanting to understand not just your world, but your customer's world as well. That whole, there's a creativity aspect to openness as well, which again, you need as a salesperson. You need to be open to new product services that your business that you're maybe selling, but also open to learning about your customer, the environment they're in. There's a lot of learning to be done in products, in services, the outcomes of those services, as well as all the techniques in the coming being in sales as well. So I completely agree that idea of learning, openness is critical.
I couldn't agree more. Curiosity must overlap with that.
Yes.
Because that drives the desire to learn.
Yes.
And it's, do you know, Alex, when I started out, I know you know this, but before I did all this sales stuff, I set up my business and I was helping organisations with accelerated learning. So I was actually helping them learn how to learn fast. And I'd read all these books on learning and studied. I was fascinated by the topic of learning. And when I started learning about sales, A load of the things that I was learning about sales were totally in parallel with what I was learning about learning. Right, so I was reading these books on learning, and I'm reading these books on sales, and they're saying the same thing. They were
Yeah,
saying, be
yeah,
curious and ask
yes,
questions, and you're the empty vessel. Fill up on intel and information, and make
yeah,
sense of it. And I suddenly realised that selling is really an exercise in learning.
it is.
Yeah,
And it
learning
doesn't
about your
stop.
value. Yeah, learning about your customers. It's all learning.
Maybe subcontract it or get other people to do those aspects for you, but you have to know enough to know that you need to get it done, and who to go to get things.
Edge. So
Yeah,
yeah,
funny, but yeah, we're both agreed.
yeah.
Openness, learning in the top three.
And
Yeah,
not like one last thing that just popped in my mind to share on that one is when I worked with, I worked with a lot of smart people. I became aware years back there was one client I worked with where I was working one-to-one with a lot of people in this organisation, and one of them said to me, Mark, I often think I'm the smartest person in the room. They said I often fall for that problem of thinking, I was remember at the time it was only me and him in the room, and I thought, okay, no, yeah. Everyone thinks that when they're chatting to me.
yeah,
But I tell you what I found funny, Alex, is I was coaching this guy and he said that. I was like, okay, fine. And then I coached a colleague of his and he said the same thing. It was a day or two later. He said, Mark, I often think I'm the smartest person in the room. And I started finding that amusing because I thought if you two get in the same room, we'll do, because they're smart people. They probably all. But I remember thinking at the time, that's fascinating because they're all having to sell. I wonder
yeah,
what thinking you're the smartest person in the room does to you when you're trying to sell. And I pointed out to them, I ended up writing an article on this years ago, and I called it, When You're Selling, Who's the Smartest Person in the Room? And of course, the
yeah,
answer is your customer is. And I had to point out to these people that your customer, you might be really smart, fine, right? But your customer is smarter than you about their business, about what value looks like to them, about their problems and challenges. They're smarter than you about what their boss thinks about all of this and what their boss wants. And these are all things that
yeah.
affect the sale.
But sometimes I think sometimes maybe the customer doesn't always. They think they know that they'll know what the symptoms of the problem are, and they'll think they know what the solution is. But actually, sometimes the smartest person in the room might be actually on the customer side saying, this is what I think, but actually I don't know, and I'm smart enough to know that I don't know, and to get other people in who may have a different perspective. So there's that sort of smart. But also on the sales side, even if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you've got to be smart enough to dumb that down and not let anybody else think that. That's the
Yes.
bloody worst thing you can do.
Perfect. Yeah.
The emotional intelligence that needs to be high enough to recognize, even if you are the smartest person,
Yes.
don't let that don't let that show show that you're smart, but that you don't believe you're the smartest person in the room. You've got to
Yeah.
have the emotional intelligence to recognize that.
Correct. Perfect. I mean, it is slightly complicated, but you're absolutely right. And I always said to them, look, you're the empty vessel. No matter how smart you are the empty vessel, at least in terms of empathy and trying to understand what this person in front of you is going through. Right.
Yes.
And the only
Yeah.
way to tap into that is to ask the right questions. And also, in order for them to share kind of reality with you, you need to have rapport. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to have an
Yeah.
element of trust and all
Yeah.
of that. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they won't reveal all their cards, and then you won't be able to tap into the
Yeah.
intel. So
Yeah.
so you're right. But then
Yeah.
I would say to them, once you've obtained enough, enough intel such that you can start adding value in terms of relevant insights and all of that, then you can pop your smarty pants hat on. That's what I would say to them is then, by all means, now start using your smarty pants abilities to add value to them. But
Yeah.
don't shoot too early. It's funny enough, Dave Kernan said this years ago. He said one of the biggest problems that customers report is that my people selling to me just don't listen to me. They just don't listen to me.
Yeah, I think Sandless says, doesn't it? Don't spill your beans on the floor. There's something around that. Don't just blurt out all the stuff you know until you know what it is that might be of interest and might be of relevance.
Exactly.
And I
And that's interesting, Alex, because you started off by talking about on the sales side the different roles that people take contributing to sales. We talked about farmers versus hunters and so on, but there's all sorts of different roles, pre-sales, whatever it is you're doing, whatever part of the buying process you are contributing to. But then you think about all the combinations. It's like, who is that particular person selling, talking to? What sort of buyer? And you're right, we're talking about some traits here that probably work across the board on the whole, but it will depend on your role.
What's your fourth one, Mark?
Fourth. So I'm calling this one either attunement, which is a word people may have heard before, attunement, or you could just call it credible rapport. Yeah, you could just call it rapport, but rapport doesn't mean good rapport, does it? You can get bad rapport. So I attunement and credible rapport, and it's the glue in the conversation. And we just spoke earlier about, if you want a buyer to share intel with you, they're not going to do it if they don't trust you. And in a nutshell, if they get a sense that you are their kind of credible person, that you are the person they want in front of them, to be talking to them about this buying decision, if you can convince them of that as quickly as you can and consistently as you can, they're more likely to share the truth of the situation, and you're going to have more buttons and levers at your disposal to move things forward. So yeah, credible rapport is what I call it. And some people naturally have it, as we know. So, they tend to naturally be able to adapt. Brilliant. If that's the case, you don't need to work on that one. You've got that one, fine. There's an awful lot of people who I think don't do it as well as they could. You don't need to get it perfect. You need to get it just enough so it's like the conduit for the conversation to work.
Yes. Kind of trusted advisor epithet that people use as well. And that feels like it fits really nicely in that sort of engineer, or the more technically orientated, that a customer will trust your advice because of the credibility that you have in understanding the solution and how it fits into their problems. So it's that understanding of the customer side of the equation,
Yes.
what their challenges, problems are, really understanding that, and then understanding clearly enough about your own solution set, and maybe if there's other third parties, partners you can bring in to make it an even better all-round solution, that they will trust you to come up with the right thing, not just with the thing that you have that you want to sell.
That's good. Yeah.
It's that broadness of scope, isn't it?
Getting the fit and the value right. I always talk about fit and value, those two things. Yeah, and not just pushing the one thing that you're selling, because of course that loses trust immediately, because the buyer's thinking, well, that doesn't fit
exactly.
what I'm saying. You're not listening to me. We don't want that. This is why I'm also not a big fan. We're in a world now where everyone uses the word pitch a lot. The amount of people I come across and they say, I just want to get my pitch right. And it always sort of hurts me a little bit, because I think, there's a lot you need to do first before you aim that pitch and get it right.
I still think there's a place for all of this stuff. So if a customer wants a pitch, they've done the research, they know that's what they want. It's not a big complex thing. They just want to get on and buy it. And actually, maybe they do want, 4 or 5 that gets pitched at them. If you remember, I don't know if you saw Clarkson's farm when he was buying a new tractor, and that was a typical pitch. And they'd obviously done it to make it deliberately look as though it was a lot of technical people selling all the features of the tractors, because that's what it was.
Yeah.
There was like an iPad with all the different features and how you could pre-program it to do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
99% of it was completely irrelevant to what Clarkson wanted. I was saying, that's the thing that I use like every day. That's the thing I use most of all. And whoever can do that the quickest, that's the one I'm going to get.
Perfect.
And that was what he was after.
Yeah.
But that was, even though it's a massively complicated bit of equipment, he just wanted a pitch on the tractor, not a lot of analysis and a long drawn out, consulting engagement. But that there are times when a customer just wants to get on with it and give me the features.
That's right.
But you've got to be able to adapt up this kind of this ladder of different types of sales.
Yeah, that's right.
But that needs rapport. That needs rapport and understanding.
Rapport and being able to kind of hone in on the right value, of course, and help the customer, because then the customer loves it when you're having the right conversation with them, the one that they want. And like a simple version in that could have been a question along the lines of, now I'm sure there's a number of things that are important to you about this purchase of your tractor, but shall we get straight to what you think are perhaps the top 1, 2 or 3 most important things you're looking for? And he would have gone, yeah, this. Right, let's talk about that.
Exactly, exactly that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people are pitching their way. I'm noticing people are pitching their way forward, and lots of misses. And I'm watching, thinking, okay, you haven't established how the customer sees the value first.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And I suspect the reason, Mark, is that the sales training that we see isn't it's training, not coaching, and it's not sales training, it's product training. It's almost not the fault of the salesperson. If they've been taught is the features, because that is all that the organization feels capable of telling them about, because they're so enthused about their product or service. If the salesperson is only getting that feed of features, well, what else are they going to talk about?
correct.
So you need to have sales training and coaching to embed it,
That's right.
rather than just product training. And I'm seeing a lot of bias around, particularly in our high tech world, of features being presented to salespeople and how to sell. The word that you used a bit earlier, which was empathy.
Yes, good. Yeah.
Which is
Right.
stepping in your customer's shoes, really understanding what they are feeling, the pain they're feeling, and the 4 levels of pain.
Yeah.
Going beyond the symptoms to how does it impact them personally? How does it impact the business? Is there an existential threat to the business of whatever the challenge is? So it's really uncovering all of those to ask the right questions and understand the customer's viewpoint. And you need the rapport, so the customer shares what sometimes can be, quite sensitive information, but they feel enough trust and rapport with you that they will share that to help, so that you can help them in whatever solution that you end up with.
Perfect. Perfect. You almost can't go far enough as well. The more rapport you get, so long as you are pointing towards, maximizing value to that buyer in front of you and letting them see that that's what you're trying to do. There are questions you can ask. I mean, I love the question. I ask it quite a lot. Given the choices in front of you, the options that you're considering to move forward, what's your boss going to say? And what are you going to tell your boss? I think that's a really important question. What are you going to tell your boss about your decision? Because it puts their neck on the line. I mean, their neck's on the line anyway if they're responsible for a decision, but they do have to answer to someone. And the same, of course, the same works even in B2C, a bit like what you're going to tell your partner. What's your husband going to say? What's your wife going to say? They're going to say something. It's a given they're going to say something. So let's try and influence it for the better.
Yes. So that's really interesting, because with all these traits that we've talked about, they're all very positive ones, rapport, empathy, learning, openness, conscientiousness. But we also need to think of what's the kind of the other extreme, what's the shadow of all of those. And empathy, if you're too empathetic, there's a danger that you kind of avoid conflict, and you don't push back. So to your point about what's X, Y, what's Bob going to say, or whoever it may be, if you're too empathetic and almost frightened about asking the question, you're also maybe too frightened to handle objections and to preempt some of those objections, which I feel is a key skill. That you need to manage your empathy. You can't be an extreme empath in sales, because you won't push back on your customer. And one thing I equally advise the customers who I coach is that get these objections out up front. So if you're a smaller organization, or you're selling to a customer for the first time, ask questions like, is there an issue about getting on your supply list? If we were to go ahead, and we hope we do, what are the challenges that you've seen in your organization for implementing this type of solution?
Brilliant. Yes.
Is there a challenge from procurement about getting on your supply list? How do we do that? So, and you want to ask that early enough in the process, so you don't get caught at the end when you think it's all going great, and then you find they've missed some certain steps out because you've been avoiding asking these awkward questions. So
If you get them on side ASAP, which is the whole point, win them over in every way you can ASAP, intelligently and professionally, then they do suddenly become an ally. The other thing I was going to say as well, in terms of asking them frank questions, because you're right, people are uncomfortable, they over-empathise. I can't ask them that, I wouldn't want to ask them that. If there's value to be connected by asking that question, if there's not, don't ask it. If it's a question worth asking because the answer will help you help them better, then you need to find a way to ask it. And there's a real simple technique, and I've used it loads. I just say to them, I've got a question to ask you. It might seem a little bit, that I'm probing, but here's why I'm asking it. There's a reason I'm asking it, because it's going to help me connect more value to you in the area of XYZ. So you don't have to answer it, but if you did, it's going to help us grow what we're doing. Here it is. And then I ask my question, and they always answer it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Same as yourself. We've spent our time working with so many people. I'm trying to find everything I can find that helps solve every one of these little discomfort or psychological issues or whatever it is.
Yeah. So what's your one, two, four? What's your fifth one then, Mark?
My fifth one overlaps with something you said earlier. I've called it traction, which could be like
traction.
Yeah, it's staying on track, traction. When you get knocked over, it's a bit like your buoyancy one. It's very similar. If you get knocked over, you know how to get back on the horse. Hopefully you don't get knocked over, because you've got this traction. You just keep moving forwards. I've worked with people who've got so overly emotional, the people selling, that they're their own worst enemy. They've just over emotionalized everything and got knocked down. So it's very much like your buoyancy one.
You mean the resilience to not let go, to like keep going?
So a grip on your tires, like gripping onto that road and keep moving.
Yes.
That's what it is. Yeah.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
And there comes a time in a sale, isn't there, if you really aren't getting the traction from your customer, because it's got to be a two-way process. That if you're not getting the traction, you've got to also know when to, I guess, qualify out and say, I've pushed this as much as I can. I now need your support and engagement, and know that that you're as committed to this as I am. And if you're not getting the same traction and grip back, it's kind of time to let go until such time as the traction is reciprocated.
You're right. So you're absolutely right. Knowing when to quit or what to do with a deal next based on your qualification process.
Yes,
is what I mean. I don't mean traction beyond that. And
it's not like a limpet that doesn't let go.
Yeah,
it's more like a Hoover that you switch off. I'm with you, but then I know when to switch it off as well.
That's right, correct. So it's traction on the right deals at the right times. Yeah. It's about when is it your turn to roll your sleeves up, keep a deal progressing. But if they reject you, it's about not getting upset.
Yeah.
Traction is, no, that's fine. I mean, I've talked to people and said, actually, if you own your process well enough, you almost can't get rejected, because you've established before your buyer has that you shouldn't keep talking. Yeah. Like, it's idealistic what I'm saying, but in an ideal world, it's like, this doesn't make sense to pursue anymore. I haven't heard the value from the horse's mouth. We keep using horse analogies. You should be with them, alongside them, and say, no, it doesn't make sense to keep talking for now, but it might do in 6 months. Let's pick up in 6 months.
Yes. My fifth one, I only had 5, don't forget, although some of them were doing a lot of work, to be fair. And my fifth one, I had 3, and I've chose this one in the end. So the first one, I did have drive. And then I thought, that's a bit passive. Once it's going, you're the one who keeps it going and keeps it buoyant. And the other one I was going to have but didn't was extroversion, being an extrovert.
Okay.
And again, that's because it's a bit like empathy. You don't want to be too much of an extrovert, because it's all about you and the sort of entertainer and being energized by the people, and you need some of that, the confidence to go and obviously speak to people and network and do all those good things. But equally, the other extreme of being an introvert, again, you can't be too introverted and you just like your own company. and do your own spreadsheets or whatever, there is absolutely a time and a place, and you will want to have no distraction and do your own thing. Presentations, preparation, whatever you want to do. We've talked about this before, about being an ambivert, sort of somewhere in the middle of that. So the one I chose, which was being an initiator.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one.
Because I remember one of my old sales managers saying, nothing happens without a salesperson starting it and then driving it, but starting it. And so I always thought, yeah, and it's true in corporate, certainly in corporate enterprise world, unless you've got a salesperson who gets the business behind them, then a deal's not going to happen because nobody's kind of leading it. Hasn't got the traction that you mentioned. And equally, I keep thinking, you see pictures of like cavemen or cave people that they're all sitting around a fire. But there's always somebody that's chiseling away with a flint and getting the spark going.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that for me is the first salesperson.
Yes.
Somebody who started something.
Yeah,
not fire starters, but you're somebody who's got the spark to initiate. So that's why I had initiator.
I love it. We're slipping puns in now accidentally as well. I love that. I have not put that on my list, and I agree in some shape or form that initiator is important, almost in whatever your contribution is. The US general years ago who set out a list of rules, and on his list of rules there were two I loved in particular. One of them was take charge, and the other one that I loved off his list was do the right thing. And I pulled those two out, but take charge and do the right thing is one of my favourite mindsets to switch on, and I think the initiator would do that. And my little symbolism in my own mind, and I share this in my training and coaching with people, is for take charge. I often use the phrase roll your sleeves up, get on your feet, whether metaphorically or actually. And I don't see enough of that in people in sales. Partly, I think in this day and age, people are hiding behind their computers, hiding behind emails, not, you know what I mean? And they don't initiate. I think a lot of them are waiting for someone to come and save them or to pass them a lead. Take charge. Like the guy I just mentioned, the one who's scooping up all the opportunities. I said, what are you doing?
Yes.
Yeah, he said, because they're all not taking these opportunities, so I am.
Yeah,
so he's an initiator.
Yeah.
And do the right thing it requires some debate, because that's...
Yeah, but so you want to be initiating the right things, which is why there's a qualification process and there's that, but you've got to get it started to in the first place. And then do the right thing is particularly relevant today's age, which is all about being authentic, about being trustworthy, sincere, all those good qualities that need to be reflected in the work that you're doing and the way that you put yourself forward to your customers as well.
Perfect.
Particularly in today's world, that we need that.
And then the person selling to Jeremy Clarkson that you mentioned, we already just established that perhaps the right thing to do would have been to ask, what's important to you about this tractor? And that's a version of doing the right thing.
Exactly. And what was interesting, again, going back to that the people that were sent to do the demo of these 6-7 tractors, they were all, technical people rather than salespeople. They don't want a salesperson; they want a specialist to tell them about the functionality of their tractor.
Yes,
Clarkson was, an outlier in that respect. So again, it's horses for courses. It's having the right type of salesperson with the right skill set that maps onto the customer and what they're looking to.
Values in the eye of the beholder. It comes from the customer. That's great, Alex. I've got my sixth one.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, what's your sixth one?
Well, it's similar to what you just said. So I've called it a bias to action. So I phrase it as it's people who get stuff done. Yes. People who are doers, which is similar to the initiating, overlaps.
Yeah.
Again, I get frustrated because I see a lot of people who don't get stuff done.
Yeah.
There's that old phrase, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I quite like that. There's a lot of people, like I said, to be spoon-fed or helped.
There are other people doing a hell of a lot of work, but they're probably on multiple deals. But as far as you're concerned, they should all be on the one that you're
There's not a bad like proxy measure for that. When I've walked into different offices and said hello to all the people selling, there's often one person who's simply moving faster physically or moving more than everyone else. And honestly, I just think you're the person getting stuff done. I can see you. You're picking up the phone, you're twitching around, but other people are sitting there like that.
Yeah.
So I genuinely think that the animation and a bit of movement is an indicator.
The rider is that they're doing the right things. You know, they're not just being busy. But again, if you've got these other traits of the conscientiousness and which is about the discipline for me, about knowing what you're doing and that it is the right thing.
Yes.
But again, that's where coaching comes. That's where managers can help direct and advise on what the right type of activity is.
Yes, correct.
But you need the essence of the energy and the drive.
I think given what we've talked about, straight away, I almost don't need to ask you this, but if you saw someone with those traits that we've just discussed, I think it's fair to say you would find them worth betting on in a sales role, first of all, because we've shared the traits that we think are a good starting point.
Well, what's interesting, because was it Simon Sinek, who's I think you said that you don't buy for competence, I buy for attitude.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
all the list that we've gone through has all been for me about attitude, things that you can't actually train or teach.
Well, I would argue that you can grow them or help grow them.
Yes, you can develop those, but they have to have that nascent values in themselves to start with.
Hence my one about the desire to learn. Are they willing to roll their sleeves up, challenge themselves, and learn something new? And it's such a pivotal question. They have to want this. And
but you've no doubt seen the film Ratatouille.
Yes,
yeah, and the little rats. You know what he says, something like, anyone can cook.
Yeah, that's right.
Meaning that even a rat has the capability of being a cook. But I almost feel the same in selling. Anybody can sell, provided they've got the right mindset and these current characteristics. That you can turn into. Don't worry about not being able to close or not being able to ask the right questions. You can be taught that.
100%.
But you need some of those key fundamental qualities if you're going to be successful.
Perfectly put. That's what opens the door to the whole improvement thing. Is when they're willing to and they want. I have worked with some people in the past who definitely didn't. They were shepherded along, to go through the sausage machine like everyone else. But what I also worked out, Alex, and this happens sometimes as well, is if you start with their willing colleagues first, and then their colleagues start praising what's going on, say, I'm finding this easier and I'm getting good results more easily and more enjoyably, it rubs off on the reluctant ones. So there's a whole tactical sequence that you can get clients to follow if they're willing to work with you on that, do things in the right way at the right times. There's a whole load of conversations we could have in future about any of these in depth, isn't there? It's to qualify, they are kind of growable or learnable if someone is interested in looking at how to do that. I genuinely believe there are things you can do to increase your empathy a bit more.
Absolutely. And then the other counter side of that is then the active listening. How are you really listening to the answers?
Yes.
And that's another skill that can be learned and probably needs to be learned. When you're starting off in sales, yes, you've got your questions, but you're so busy about thinking about the next question you've got to ask, you don't listen to the answer or where that may take you. All these can be learned.
Yeah, just by a willing person. What you can do with this sort of list is, first of all, you can hold it up against people in your team that you are thinking of either moving into sales. You can say, who do we start with? That's one way of using this sort of list. But they score high on those. Maybe they might want to do it. Who knows? And other than that, you can use it as a list of things to improve incrementally, one by one, on your outcomes.
Yes.
Measure it, improve it, measure it until it's there.
There's three. There's the manager. Who do I recruit? How can I get them to work best for themselves, but also how to be a positive impact to the rest of the team. Maybe there's skills, personality traits they've got that can help influence other members. So there's definitely the manager who who would find this kind of analysis useful. But there's also the salesperson or the prospective salesperson. If you're thinking of going into sales, but you think, oh no, that's, I'm not an extrovert, and I'm sure that you need to be an extrovert to be in sales. Well, actually, the way we've just talked this through, I suspect there's people who maybe before had thought, no, sales isn't for me because I can't do X, Y, Z. And now they're realizing, actually, yeah, I am open to learning. I am a positive sort of person. I am buoyant. I can, I do have empathy.
Yeah.
So there are these traits that maybe people either weren't aware of or didn't think they had that inside them. And
Yes.
like you say, there's plenty of personality tests out there that can help can give you this view if you want some help with that sort of self-awareness. Maybe I think that's very helpful to give you that external perspective for coaches to have this lens.
Very helpful. I do think clients do value an external coach as well. I think that sales managers should know how to coach well. I think, in my opinion, a lot of them don't know just because they haven't learned over the years, or they've done it the way that they were taught and so on. And obviously they tend to project across to their team what worked for them at a different point in time, often decades before, in a different world. And then they wonder why it's not working for their team. But yeah, I mean, getting an external coach, one that matches, your team, what you're trying to do, they get to bring, questions and ideas and things that have worked for all of their other clients as well. Again, it's about knowing the right questions to ask, and all of the skills in sales, I think, tie into good coaching as well. Having the empathy, asking the right questions,
That's true.
massively similar skill set. There you go.